Cohen flipped. Trumpkins. The jig is up. Hour and a half to both Over a Pipe and Typing Piper, who made videos, who made VRs, to my video last week called What Happens Now. And my video was in response to the news from Helsinki, the summit between our dear leaders, President Trump and Premier, Chancellor, whatever his name is, Putin. And so that was now 2 weeks ago, right? Because I did the video at the end of the week after Helsinki. It was 2 weeks ago. And Over a Pipe has not finished his VR. He did half a VR. And sir, it was the first time I've ever watched an Over a Pipe video. And I was very impressed. You guys should check out his channel. The whiteboard got me, man. The whiteboard did it. I was not expecting that because I hadn't seen his other work. So you should go look. But I've made some notes, right, as I was watching it, and my kid made some notes. I think they're both equally as intelligible. And all of these notes and everything that we all said is out of date because Michael Cohen is squealing like a pig. Smoking Stockaby's Luxury Bullseye Flake. I want to take issue with both Typing Piper, who left the link to the famous, I think of it as famous, the TEDx talk about, or maybe it's just a TED talk. What's the difference between TED and TEDx anyway? Like TED wasn't enough. In any event, there's some sort of TED talk about how the world is actually getting a lot better. And we feel like the world is coming, to this hell in a handbasket state, but in reality, by pretty much any measurable metric, we're doing really well. That's all well and good, and and I'm glad for all of that. And you've heard me say this over and over and over again, that's how I want things to continue. And maybe you haven't heard me. I've written this over and over again. I had this blog that no one read, where I went in depth a little more about some of this stuff. And yeah, the world is getting a lot better. And so it was in like 1914, like the spring of 1914, things were doing great. Economically, things are, I mean, we posted, 4-point-something% GDP growth. Everything's good. Everything's great. It's just great. Everything's fun. Except the president of the most powerful country in the world exhibits a lot of dark triad personality traits and has an affinity for strongmen dictators like the one that got him elected. Yeah, there's that. So Over a Pipe made this VR that was kind of a rebuttal to mine and talking about going back to the election, which, as you guys know, is my favorite thing to talk about. And then Typing Piper rebutted his rebuttal and called him out for talking about the election. And it was a little, Typing Piper, you're a little bit harsh. You're a little bit harsh there on some of that stuff. But Typing Piper did correctly point out that my point is not to argue against Donald Trump and for Hillary Clinton. That was never my point. My point is something a little bit different from that. But okay, let's break it down. I just realized what we're going to call this video. This video is going to be number 1 in a new series, maybe the only one in a new series called The Friday Night Breakdown. We're going to break this down. I don't want this spilling over into the Sunday Anti-Socials because that's what's happened a lot in the last month or so, is that we've talked about Donald Trump, and we don't need to talk about Donald Trump anymore. It's enough. It's enough. And so let's have a separate thing where we talk about this, because obviously everybody wants to talk about it. And I'm actually going to be getting started this weekend, sort of getting things in order for what I think is going to happen, and I might bring you along on some of that. So this will dovetail nicely. Here's the breakdown. People are evil. Everyone is evil. Everyone. Some of us are more evil than others. The amount of evil that you can muster is directly proportional to how far you will go in life. So there's good people that succeed, right? That make it really far. But all things being equal, ambition, skill, competence, drive, talent, whatever, all things being equal, an evil person will always, always go farther than a good person. Because being evil is an evolutionary advantage. If you and I are engaged in competition and we're just as talented and just as driven and have the same resources at our disposal, but I am willing to cheat, I'm going to win until I get caught. But if I'm smart, I won't get caught, right? Which is why the Clintons are a political dynasty, right? Because they didn't get caught. They were just smart enough not to get caught. That doesn't make them good people. It just makes them good at being evil people. And that we see that over and over again. And if you've ever worked in business of any sort or any kind of like public sector private sector corporations where they're in an industry with lots of, I'm revealing too much about my past here, but you don't have to look to politics to see this at work. This is how the world works. And the higher up the ladder you go, the more likely you are to come across people who got there by being evil or crazy or both. There's a lot of crazy people in positions of power. Crazy, crazy, crazy people. And if you meet enough of them, you start to realize that. I met a lot of rock stars. Not a lot, but I've met some, like we've talked about Billy Corgan before on this channel. Now, I was a big Smashing Pumpkins fan. Billy Corgan's insane, y'all. Like, brilliant musician. Well, he was back in the day. But the man is crazy. He's not in touch with reality, which maybe that's why he's a brilliant musician. I don't know. But when you're a rock star, it's kind of harmless, right? Like the most you're going to do is like influence like what kind of t-shirts the kids buy at concerts or whatever. When you're in a position of power and government, it's a little bit different. I used to think that if I just advocated, or, well, a better word would be if I just illuminated, through journalism, if I just illuminated that fact a little bit more, then the people that weren't quite as evil would have an advantage, right? They would get around the people that were a little more evil because they had light shining on them, and the people that were a little more evil would fall by the wayside because they got caught in whatever evil, dastardly schemes they were up to, blah, 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 blah. What I realized in 2016 that made me go this direction with my channel and made me go this direction with my life is that they're all really, really fucking evil. And I began to realize that when I was still working for newspapers and still working for politics. It's time for me, speaking of, it's time for me to go ahead, because people are asking, right? People are asking because of this latest thing that I did. They're asking, what are your politics? Whose side are you on? And I always say I'm not on any side. I'm done with it all, right? But it's fair for me for you guys to want to know where I stood on things when I had a stance. And the stance was that let's see. So the earliest presidential election the first presidential election I was old enough to vote in. I have voted in every election in my life, well, except for 2017. Every election, every primary, every runoff, blah, 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 blah. I was the guy that, you wonder why you don't get the survey calls, like the polling calls, like who do you think is going to win? Who do you want to win? It's because you don't vote in the primaries and the runoffs. The pollsters for Pew and, whoever, when they poll likely voters, they're polling the people that don't just vote when there's a presidential election, they vote in midterms, they vote in local elections. And all that stuff is public record. When you show up at the ballot box, that's public record. And so they can get that information. And that's how I was the guy that always got the calls. And I would have to say, I'm sorry, I can't tell you my opinion. I'm a member of the media. I have to remain unbiased, right? So the earliest election that I voted in was the Bush-Gore election, and I voted for Clarence Clemons, who was the saxophonist for the E Street Band. And I voted for him as a write-in candidate because Bruce Springsteen told me to. Don't regret that one bit, by the way. But I voted very seriously in the down ballot races my whole life. I don't remember if I voted for John Kerry in 2004, but I can't imagine that I would have. John Kerry was I didn't vote for John Kerry. But I know I didn't vote for Bush because of that whole Iraq war thing. So I must have voted for a libertarian candidate, and of course we can't remember his name now because why would we? What was it, Bednarik, maybe? I did actually vote for John McCain. And in 2008, I registered for the first time. I chose a political affiliation. I registered as a Republican so that I could vote in the Republican primary for Ron Paul. And that didn't work out. So I ended up voting for McCain-Palin on the record. Is that what happened? Yeah, right, because then the next one was Romney. And I voted for Romney. I regret... Well, it's easy to say you regret McCain-Palin because Palin is obviously insane. She was obviously insane at the time, but her flavor of insanity was much more pleasing to me at the time. Not so now. Because when she was the craziest person on the scene, it was kind of cute, you know? But now that we got Donald Trump there, you're just like, oh, you're just like a lesser version of Trump. But anyway, I don't really regret the Romney vote. I feel like Romney he would have been a great president in another time. He's kind of like the Walter Mondale of this century. It's like just so bland but the reason I voted for him was Benghazi. Not that I was going to vote Obama anyway, because I disagree with his policies. I think Obama was I will, in hindsight, I will give Obama this. Very very well-tempered president. Very, he had a certain style that I thought was befitting the office. Lying, warmongering, sack of shit and all that. But I would now go back to either of the two previous administrations in a heartbeat. Obamacare and Iraq War notwithstanding, I would gladly hit the rewind button. So I voted for Romney mostly because of Benghazi, and I could not believe that the American people would reelect Obama after Benghazi. It boggled my mind. And here we are today. You don't have to believe any of that, but I mean, I'm being honest. I hope that will silence a little bit of the oh, sorry, your girl lost kind of stuff. I would never, ever, ever, ever have voted for Hillary Clinton. I have a personal distaste for the Clintons that is deep down and non-negotiable. And there are times since the election when I have wished that she won, Helsinki being one of them. But there has not been a time when I regretted not voting for her. I said at the time, and I will hold to this, that if these were the choices that we had, we deserve what we got, right? So we are getting what we deserve. And that's the premise. Let's say there was something else right. Where do I get my news? Every day I check the Drudge Report and Huffington Post. And so I feel like I get the far right and the far left. I don't really need anything in between. And I am, having been in media, I'm pretty well aware of how bias works. Every outlet has its bias. Every reporter has their bias. And I would never say that they don't, that they're unbiased. I would never say that they're trustworthy news sources. I think that they should all be, everything you read, trust no one. Trust absolutely no one. That's how it is. I don't look at MSNBC any more than the Drudge Report or Huffington Post takes me there. The Rachel Maddow piece that I think I referenced, I'm not normally a fan of hers, but I think I referenced it last time. That was the first complete Rachel Maddow segment I've ever seen in my life. I don't watch that kind of programming because it's usually totally full of shit. There was an interesting discussion in the comments about Sean Hannity. if you believe Sean Hannity, if you believe Rush Limbaugh, Glenn Beck, Rachel Maddow, you don't know how this game is played. Those are not news sources, and I mean, I don't want to insult anybody, but that's just Tucker Carlson is not a news source. Then what is, right? Certainly not me. Certainly not some guy on the internet. Certainly not Reddit, which is where I've been reading quite deeply into the Michael Cohen situation, which it's just beautiful, y'all. It's just so look, Overpipe he's still got like part 2 of his VR coming out. Typing Piper has already, like I'm not trying to end the conversation before it's even like going. But if you think Donald Trump is a good president, there's not really much to talk about. Like I'm not here to debate that. I'm not here to debate whether Hillary Clinton would have been better. I'm not like, this is not what this channel is about. This channel is about trust no one and buy a lot of beanie weenies because we're getting ready to have a cyber war with Russia because Michael Colin, well, that's about right too. The point is that the fact that we're even talking about these people illustrates about us that we have failed as a nation and that the American experiment is over. Typing Piper called Over a Pipe out on America being the greatest nation. And, I think I just don't care. Why isn't the auto exposure adjusting so that my face isn't? I mean, I want you guys to be able to see my face, right? That's the draw to this channel, right? Come on, adjust. Can't fix it. You're just gonna have to live with it. Sorry. Right, like the fact that the future of the Republic depends on what exactly Michael Cohen tells Robert Mueller in the next few weeks. We're done, and I don't particularly think it's useful to call America, well, is it the greatest nation? I don't know. There's mass incarceration and blah, 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 blah. It's certainly the most powerful nation. Certainly the most economically successful nation. A nation that was very, very fortunate to come about at a very, I just can't handle it. How about that? Is that a little better? Yeah. American exceptionalism is an idea that I've let go of because I just don't care. Don't care. Doesn't affect me. And if we were that great, then why is half the country supporting the person you hate? Because either way, right? Whether you're a Trumpkin or a Clinton, and you're a Clintonian, whatever. The other half of the country, 50%. It's not a bunch of crazy neo-Nazis / socialists running around with their signs anymore. The other half of the country supports the extreme opposite criminal enterprise that you support. That's it. There's nothing left when that's the case. So I don't find that a useful discussion. I don't find it a useful thing to talk about whether Trump is corrupt. He's obviously corrupt. Trump is going down. Well, excuse me. Trump should go down. In any kind of normal world, Trump would either be impeached and pardoned by Pence, or impeached and will stand trial for conspiracy against the United States. It is clear. He who hath eyes, let him see. It's clear what he did. It's clear what he did. On top of that, he's a tyrant. He's a fascist. He's an authoritarian. Well, authoritarian fascist. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. There are many, many reasons to dislike Donald Trump. So what? There are many, many reasons to dislike Hillary Clinton. Why talk about it? We talk about it to illustrate exactly what we're dealing with here. So Over a Pipe, hasn't yet, but I'm anticipating, and I promise you this is not a rhetorical device coming out with this video earlier than his. I'm not trying to head him off at the pass. It's Friday night. I got time to make a video. He used the phrase trap words. I saw Auschwitz on his whiteboard. He's going to call me out for saying that Trump has instituted concentration camps and Trump is a fascist. Trump is very definitely a fascist. Trump has instituted concentration camps. These words have meanings, and they apply. And, you know, John Ferguson was offended that I would use the term fascist to describe Republicans. I'm sorry. The GOP, lock, stock, and barrel, has sold its soul to Donald Trump. You got to be blind not to see that that's the case. Whether you agree with it or not, maybe you're like Trump. Yes, let's all get on the bandwagon. But they're on the bandwagon, and I think I have the political acumen to assert that Trump is a fascist. You know, the definite, you know, ultranational. Okay, I'm not going to define fascism for you, because I respect you more than that. My audience in general, I respect you more than that. However, I'm aware some people don't know what these words mean. A commenter pointed out the fascism of Antifa. No, Antifa is anti-fascist. They are far left. Fascism is far right. It's basic political science 101. The scary part, the point that I keep trying to make, but it's so easy to get caught up in all this, right? It's because this is where the emotional stuff is, right? The point that I'm trying to make is, if you take an objective, non-emotional look at the situation, we have Antifa on one side, whatever the hell they call themselves, on one side. We got Trump's troopers on the other side. You got neo-Nazis or whoever. These are the same people, the political left and the political right, both authoritarians, right, on the 4-point scale, right? They are either to the left or the right, but they're both on the authoritarian versus the permissive point, right? These are the same people marching under the same flags that were marching in Weimar Germany in the 30s. Like, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. And if you take out all the like emotional stuff, right, that we love to argue about, and about which we break fellowship over which we break fellowship, it's staring you right in the face. If you don't think that the ICE detention centers are concentration camps, I'm not quite sure what we should call places where people with no rights in our society are held indefinitely with no due process, and they all happen to be of an ethnic minority. Now, they're not death camps. We've talked about this. They're not death camps. I'm not saying that. But you don't get to death camps without first having concentration camps. When Dachau opened, it was not a death camp. It was ein Konzentrationslager. That's a totally different thing. Gribbs, these people are criminals. Yeah. And what are criminals if not politically undesirables? Political undesirable, whatever. You know what I'm trying. Personas non grata, right? Legal systems are great things. They're wonderful things. They keep civilization going for the most part. But just because you have a legal system doesn't mean you have a moral system. So that's the point. America is the greatest nation. We have a legal system. We have a political system. You know, did Donald Trump violate any statutes? Did Hillary Clinton commit any prosecutable offenses? These questions don't matter. These questions don't matter. What matters is the writing is on the wall. Again, he who hath ears, let him hear. We are in a dangerous time. It's going to get more dangerous. The windows are closing for those who set up this situation. The situation is coming to a close. Again, as we speak, as the YTPC turns, Michael Cohen is squealing like a pig. And here's the great stuff. Here's the great stuff about this. Mueller has not offered Michael Cohen immunity for this testimony about Trump being aware of the meeting with the Russians. Cohen's people did not link the fact that Cohen is willing to testify about it. Did not leak the fact that Cohen is willing to testify about it. If they didn't leak it, who do you think did? Trump leaked it to get out ahead of it, to get in front of it, and to reduce Cohen's value to the prosecution. if this information is public, if there are other ways that this information, you know what I'm saying. I don't need to explain this to you. The point that I'm trying to make is the fact that Mueller hasn't offered immunity for this information means he already knew it from other sources. Means he's already got it in the bag. And that is very, very bad news for Donald Trump. So the situation is drawing to a close. It might take a year, it might take a month, it might, I don't know, it might take a week, a day. Could happen tonight. Damn if I know. I'm not in the business of making predictions anymore because all of my predictions are always wrong. But this is not the kind of thing that comes to a peaceful end. And the parties involved that made it this way, I can't imagine that this is their end game. I think the end game has to be much larger than this. So I think we're all going to come to a point in our lives when we will be tested. And whether Trump weathers this storm or not, I mean, what are they going to do? Put Hillary Clinton in office? No, I mean, be Mike Pence. I mean, it's not going to bring about a lot of policy changes. Although, you know, as in full disclosure, I don't necessarily disagree with a lot of Trump's policies. It's never been about policy for me. So the point is, we're all going to find ourselves in a situation when we have to make a choice. And your political systems and your legal systems and your American exceptionalism will not help you make that choice. So what I'm trying to do with my life and what I am trying to encourage others to do is connect, tune in to the things that will help you make that choice. Politics are no solution to a spiritual problem. And that's what we have on our hands. So that's the breakdown. That's to respond to everything that's happened this week in the YTPC and elsewhere. That's the breakdown. And tomorrow morning I'm going to get up and take a look at my supplies in the house. Take a look at my finances. Take a look at maintenance I need to do. Stockpiles I need to amass. That sort of thing. And I might be bringing you along for that because I think it's important stuff to talk about in this day and age. I think we're in for some rough waters before we get to the smooth sailing. So, thanks for watching. Hope I didn't offend you much. Keep the ends out for the ties that bind.